Folks, Saber4 here with part 2 of the little series as we kind of build in towards the Win Your Prerelease. We're going to be looking at the Secrets of Power common and uncommon rankings for the draft and sealed formats today. Also, I did note that Secrets of Power for no good reason is SCP instead of SOP, so, little correction there. Anyway, contents, what we got coming up. Yes, Secrets of Power, SCP. No, I don't know why. We'll talk about commons. These are the backbone of limited play. They are kind of how you will make the majority of your deck in either a draft or a sealed format. We'll talk about your pools a little bit and what to expect. We'll talk about uncommon cards, which are really the meat of limited and kind of what you're going to see as the heavy hitters of your deck for the most part. We'll go ranking commons. We'll go by aspect and give a top overall, a little subset of those commons. We'll rank uncommons, and then we'll run through some final thoughts. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to the channel. Really helps us out a ton with growth, or like the videos. It really helps a ton with reach. So let's go ahead and dive on in. All right, common cards. These are the backbone of your sealed play. In Star Wars Unlimited, the differentiation between common, uncommon, rare, and legendary is not just the characters themselves. It is the degree of complexity of the card. What does a card do? That said, common cards are your most likely cards to be vanilla. They're most likely to come out. They're the most likely thing to come with no text. They generally are the lower cost end of the curve. Only 2 colors in this set have a common card with a 6 or higher cost, and that is blue and green. One of the best ways then to evaluate the units that are in the common segment are stats for cost. And in this set, here's what we have. 1 cost, the best unit here, we have 5 stat points. 2 cost, the best is 6. At 3 cost, the best is 8. And at 4 cost, the best is 9. We really, after that point in the curve, we kind of run out of units to look at, just because there's not the variety of them that are there. The other thing to note about commons, since a lot of them are things that are a little bit lower complexity, is that quite often we are talking a little bit less about some of the events that happen or about a lot of the upgrades that happen, but more commonly we're talking about units. And so that's going to be how we evaluate the majority of our common pool. It's not going to be all of it. We'll see it as we go. Your pools and what to expect. All right, so in sealed, you're going to open 6 packs. With that, you're going to wind up, once we subtract leaders and bases, we're going to wind up with 84 cards in total. I've talked about this in other places. There are not rare bases in this set. And so you're going to wind up with a true pool of 84 instead of winding up with a random rare base sitting around. Because of the way this works, you're going to wind up with somewhere between 54, because there are 9 per pack, somewhere between 54 and 57 commons. So the foil slot in a pack can be any rarity, including something from the starter set. But for the most part, you're going to say 54 commons at a minimum. 57 commons is going to be not at all a irregular thing to see. That said, perfect distribution looks to be about 12 to 14 per color, and 2 to 4 per the side or neutral. Villainy and heroism, if you're mismatched from your leaders, that aspect mismatch removes 3 to 4 in the chosen colors, plus the 26 to 30 that are going to be out of aspect. So a total of around 33 to 35 cards removed. Your commons kind of pick themselves when you're talking about sealed play, just because you wind up with a pool that kind of becomes self-limiting. What's the pool in draft? Well, the interesting thing is that it's a lot larger and a lot smaller. 24 packs, if you're running a regular draft, 8 people are opening 3 packs apiece. So 24 packs get opened. which means that there's 216 common cards to get opened. If everybody takes a foil slot or a rare or a legendary or an uncommon, you're only going to miss seeing 3 of those at most over the course of the draft. And so you have a chance of seeing a lot of common cards come by you in draft play. So it is to your benefit to understand which commons you're looking for, what things you're going to be building your deck around, and kind of how you want to do things. It's also important because of that to keep your options pretty open, especially in draft play. And that's why, when we talk draft strategy, we want to talk about getting a leader pool. Sometimes I don't take the best leader available to me if it means that I'm going to lock myself either in a heroism villainy aspect or lock myself into a color aspect. But considering perfect distribution, around 42 commons per color. And that, again, if you're locked into an alignment too early, that takes away about 14 of them. And so you're looking at about 28 per color. Uncommon cards. These are really the meat of sealed play. They're a little bit higher complexity. They're a little bit more likely to have keywords or other effects, such as when played, when defeated. They generally come at a higher point in the curve. So where commons are going to fill out the meat of your early units, uncommon cards, there's only 11 units that are 2 cost or under in the uncommon set for Secrets of Power. Your evaluation of them changes since it's not all unit based. You start to ask what's good, what can I do with this, what does it do for me beyond just power and health. And so some of those effects become more key elements to deciding how you make choices. So what's my pool in sealed, or what's my pool in any kind of limited play? Cut that common math by a third or to a third. Again, 84 cards total are being opened, but that leads us to only about 18 to 19 uncommon cards, 18 to 20 uncommons. Perfect distribution, a little less than 4 per color. And then one of the side cards, be it the heroism or villainy. You'll probably play somewhere between 6 and 10 uncommons in an average 30 card deck when you're talking sealed. So you're probably going to round out the majority of the missing 30 from whatever you have from your common pool. The pool in draft, again, 72 uncommons are going to be opened in the packs. It's unlikely that you'll see them all because those are a little bit higher value, and some people are going to be drafting uncommons pretty early. But again, 14 per color would be, or 14 per color opened would be about the right distribution to expect. So there's not going to be as much of these floating around as kind of the core idea. And you have to evaluate how they work, both how they fit your deck and what kind of power they have. All right, let's dive into the rankings. We're going to do this by aspect, and I'll talk a little bit about my choice of each of the 3 as we go. In Vigilance for commons, I have 3 cards that are spread across heroism, villainy, and neutral. The Death Trooper was reprinted here. The Death Trooper is going to follow us into the next cycle. We know exactly what he does. He's been around since set 1, but this is still a really great addition here to your common pool. Being able to deal 2 damage to a friendly unit and deal 2 damage to an enemy unit when it comes into play. 3/3 isn't a wonderful stat line. 3/1 is a little worse if it has to deal damage to itself. But if you have a spy token that your opponents are sitting around with, or something similar in this set, this can wipe that out completely without having to do anything and leave behind something that has 3 attack. So Death Trooper is one of the top ones here. Chandrillian Sponsor is another huge get. Yes, 3 health. Okay, we didn't cap out on that 6 stats, but we got Restore 2 on this. And so the delta on her is 4 rather than being, rather than just being push 3 to base, I push 2 to base and heal 2 from my own. And that in itself is enough to push this into that top spot. And then Nimble Prowess. We haven't had a lot of opportunities in blue to exhaust units in an arena. And with Nimble Prowess, not only do we have that ability to be able to exhaust a unit, we do so by empowering one of our own, and we do it for just one. Note that this is not restricted, and so this includes leader units. You can drop this on one of your things after somebody's leader play and be able to exhaust a leader that they buff or add to or something else like that, and give yourself some time to either flip your leader and deal with it, or to kind of make other plays to get around it. This particular set, Secrets of Power, does not have a ton of direct removal. And so it also doesn't have, it has a little bit, but not a ton of upgrade tempering. Even so, if this cost, or if this card just reads pay 1 to exhaust an enemy unit, that is still very strong and still very on rate with what a lot of other cards can do. I like Nimble Prowess in this spot. That is a common that I am not going to be at all unhappy to take. Command. 4 of them fit in command here. The Imperial Dark Trooper, we finally have, for villainy, we finally got a 3/3 2-drop. 3/3 vanilla 2-drop, something that has been in the game for heroism in command since set 1 with Battlefield Marine. We finally got one in villainy. Budget scheming. So laws are the new event type that we got. That's just one of the things that's there. There are some things that look specifically at law, though that didn't stack into any of the leader abilities specifically. There's nothing terribly special about it, except, much like Jabba, who looked at things as tricks, here we have laws. Great. It's probably not going to make that much of a difference, considering that the cards that would play off of laws are build-arounds, and we are talking about draft, or we're talking about limited. And so the thing that's important here is that officials in this set are a pretty wide array of what's in here. Being able to give an experience token to up to 3 official units is giving us 3/3 for 2. And spreading it out over some things to make our units a little bit harder to deal with. The Beloved Orator. Okay, this is a 2/3 for 3. A little bit below the idea of 8 stat points, but we create a spy token. And that spy token is an O2 raid 2. It is also an official. And so we get an extra body. Again, not that we are looking at a lot of things that is direct removal in this set. But adding an extra body here means an extra action to churn. It also means something that your opponent has to deal with, because even though it's, you don't necessarily want to attack into that O2 all the time with one of your units. If you don't, it just reads, 2 to base. And then finally, playing a little bit off of that Beloved Order and the idea that we're going to have a lot of officials. Nubian Star Skiff here is a nice big space unit. 4/4 in space does well to survive against most of the early space units that are in common and uncommon. And while you control an official, it gains Restore 2. So again, this is one of these things where it has 4 power, it has 4 health, but its delta is 6. So every time it attacks, it's going to restore a couple to base. And, we're on the 4 resource turn when we're playing it, if we're playing it on curve. And that means that we probably have some base damage for it to start bringing back in. Aggression. Starting left to right here, and this is not specifically in an order, but here I like the Imperial Occupier. Yeah, it's only a 2/2 for 2. We were praising the the Death Trooper and the Dark Trooper as being 3/3s, but this creates a spy token when defeated. And so when this thing goes away, it leaves behind an O2 Raid 2 body. It leaves behind an official, something that you can use with other things. So this leaves behind a body that is a useful thing for the rest of the game, or for the remainder of that round. It's a good card to be able to play. It comes out nicely. It's not going to be a unit you're upset to play with your first play, because even if your opponent is able to eliminate it before you get to do something with it, it's going to leave behind a spy token, and that's of value in and itself. Sudden Ferocity is the first plot card that's going to get here. In playing the previous set, there was a lot of mileage that you could get out of playing the 3/3 upgrade. I didn't care if I emptied my hand. Good luck dealing with a turn 2 5/5 or higher. And plenty of games, especially in a sealed setting, can come down to, I plop this down on something that you have difficulty killing because, hey, look, that doesn't restrict to the ground. Your opponent didn't have a great space presence. They didn't drop something in front of your turn 1 play. Cool. Sudden Ferocity. Attack +3 in space. And if you've got an answer, if they make your opponent have an answer. And in a limited setting, that's not always the case. Unauthorized Investigation is another good one here, especially if you're just, have red cards. 3 to create a spy token, not great. Disclose a red when you do, create a second spy token, now we're talking. This is 3 for 4 points of stats, but 8 points of stats when we're attacking. And so this is a solid hit. And finally, we have a 1 cost here, the Rebellious Functionary. Notice that this is a official, 2/2 and hidden for 1. So, even if we're plopping this out later on down, filling out our curve, turn 4, turn 5, turn 6, being able to hit this and let it hit the board, it can't be attacked. And, somebody can't just burn their spy token into this. And it becomes something that can just ping 2 on the next turn or soak up a token, do something like that. It's a very useful card to be able to fill out curve. And because of that, this is joining my top commons. Cunning. We have the biggest card on our list here, the Trade Federation Delegates, simply for the fact that it creates those 2 spy tokens. Again, churning actions is going to be kind of one of those important things. And being able to create those 2 tokens means that instead of getting just 3/4, because 3/4 for 5 is not a good rate. 3/8 for 5 spread across 3 units doesn't feel great because we sound like we just had 3 attack. But on attack, raid 2, we have 7/8 worth of play. And we have 7/8 worth of play where we can churn 3 actions. Bogged down in procedure. Again, we've got better because we have the ability with one of our first cards in Vigilance to be able to exhaust a unit for 1. Here, the upside to bogged down in procedure is the idea that I can disclose yellow, and by disclosing yellow, I can exhaust a second unit. Again, notice with this that we are not limited to non-leader. We can exhaust a leader with this. We can disclose. We can exhaust something else. Your opponent pumps a couple of things, and you happen to be playing yellow. Bogged down in procedure, show a yellow card, put 2 of them out of commission. And then finally, Krea's Whispers. Here we have an interesting one to be able to draw and kind of filter. In limited play, where we have a 30-card deck, I get to look at 10% of my deck and choose a card. I also get to set up what comes in my next turn. It's unlikely that all 3 cards are the thing that I want to have as my next 3 cards. So this lets me filter one of them that I can't really deal with right now, or that just isn't on par with the rest of them. Lets me filter one of those to the bottom of my deck, while at the same time drawing a card and setting up my next turn for a cost of 2. This is a good card in sealed because, like I said, this is looking at 10% of your deck. This is a great way to kind of pull your way through, and even if you don't wind up with a huge early play, this is a good one to have. All right. That said, let's look at the top overall. Chandril and sponsor, which we talked about. I'm going to put contempt for culture in here. This is a big hit because there are a lot of these non-vehicle units that only have a couple of health, especially in the early game. Or if your opponent has put out a spy token, this says kill that spy token and create one of your own. If your opponent has a unit with 2 health or less left, you can defeat that unit and create a spy token. There just isn't that much in this set that uses any kind of hard control, especially in the commons. This is one that does, and it creates a unit at the same time. We would play Daring Raid, and we play Daring Raid for 1, and Daring Raid for 1 didn't create a unit. We would play a 2/2 for 1. All right, this kind of accomplishes both of those things. So Contempt for Culture comes into my top overall commons, joining the rest of the things from other aspects. I don't have anything from red that was in here because I think that the top 5 are represented. Nubian Starskiff we've talked about, Nimble Prowess we've talked about, Trade Federation Delegates we've talked about. Let's move on to uncommons. Before we begin, a couple of acknowledgments on the uncommons. Centicaz. Centicaz might be the most impactful card in this set because this set is not going to rotate away until pilot leaders do as well. And there are several pilot leaders that are on 6, and so in open play, this is a plot card that basically says when you flip your leader, attack with it. When you flip your pilot leader, attack. And we know from action compression from things like Boba or Luke or things like that we can very easily create situations where the unit that you're attacking with has 8 power, 9 power. Being able to immediately slam with that and do the leader ability of something like Boba where you barrage and get rid of, doesn't leave your opponent the opportunity to come back and get rid of that leader unit or get rid of that leader by playing something like upgrade removal. This is a very, very powerful card. Had this come with pilot leaders, this would be a card that just dictates your color choice. Much like in the previous set, if you manage to open Churret, you should be playing blue. If you open Senta, you definitely need to consider playing red. 18 pre-release leaders. 8 of them are 6 cost or higher, and so can use Senta naturally. That number drops down to 6 when we talk about draft, though the acknowledgement there is that you could potentially open showcases of the other leaders. Also include Wilro Hood in here because this is just hilarious. You handed a guy an ice cream maker and told him to run across the screen as an extra, and he is forever in Star Wars lore. Now as a 2/5, and as long as he has an upgrade, he can't be defeated or returned to hand by card abilities. Yeah, that's just pretty cool. Grab that upgrade, run along with it. Yeah, here we go. All right, let's rank the uncommons. 3 of them here in Vigilance. The Creditor's Claim. We don't have much in the way of control cards, but Creditor's Claim allows us to play some control and get value into a unit. So it's a +2/+2 upgrade, and as long as that upgrade persists, when that unit is defeated, you can also defeat another unit. So as long as your opponent hasn't just slammed their only unit into this to defeat it, you can defeat a unit with 3 or less health. Is pretty nice. The Embarn Mobile Cannon. The first time that damage would be put into this thing every phase, prevent that damage. This is a 30-card deck. There's not enough units to throw 2 attacks into this every turn. There's not a whole lot of things that you could throw an attack into it with, throw away a spy token and then chase it by doing something that does 3 damage. And so, yes, this is a 7-3, but there's just not a lot of good ways to deal with that. And it's going to be, it's going to 2-for-1 your opponents trying to get rid of it. Just because, again, 7 is a high bar for its attack, so they're going to have to put a lot into this thing to get it off the field. And then the Senator here, we have the full delta of, once we look at her attack plus the restore 1, we have the full delta of 3 that's common with those 3/5 3 spot. That's just kind of the best in spot for that. But on attack, she gives another friendly official restore 2. And so if you are playing with officials, which is very, very easy to do, she creates another restore 2 unit. This is a really, really good hit for Vigilance Heroism. Command. Masamita comes in here. Give an experience token to up to 2 other official units. Played out with plot. 3/4 is a little below rate, but again, remembering that you are giving out 2 extra experience tokens, and so this gives you a total of 5/6 worth of stats for cost. If you're playing it in a pre-release and you're playing it with Palpatine, this comes out for 1, or something else, comes out for cheap, which allows you to play this pretty easily. You can play another official and then do this. So this is a great way to get some things onto the board, and then to buff them, which is quite a powerful thing to do. Renewed Friendship. We are playing with a 30-card deck. Being able to return a unit from your discard pile to your hand and create tokens. So I created 2 tokens to churn attacks with that are raid 2 tokens, and I returned a unit to my hand. I will take that. The Tailender Shuttle. If you have the initiative, create a spy token. 3/4 in space for 3 is not a terrible stat line. It's the Falcon stat line. The Falcon stat line is 3/4. This is only a 2/4. That's fine. We're still looking at something that is able to, if I keep that's forcing my opponent to make a choice. Do they want to take initiative and risk not doing something, or do they want to leave me able to churn tokens? And not attacking with your spy tokens for a turn or 2 might not feel ideal, but forcing your opponent to try and figure out how they want to take initiative or when to take initiative so that they don't just get a token swarm is a big deal. In aggression, we've already talked about Senta. I'm not going to cover her again, but here we have Hondo as well that can come out on that same 6 resources, and it has plot. But every other unit gaining raid 1 is quite powerful. He does have 1 more attack than Senta does. You're going to burn a lot of resources to do this, but giving everything raid 1, quite a hit. In the previous set, I was fortunate enough to open the Sun in a couple of draft events, and added him to my list. And when suddenly he's on the board and you've got the Force, because everything had the Force, you just went +2/+0 all the way across the board. And it was an incredible piece of pressure on your opponent. This doesn't even require that token. So as long as Hondo is around, everything gains raid 1. Cunning. One of the few times that I'm looking at Cunning, or one of the few times that I'm looking at pure stats, Hunter here is just a giant. This is the size and scope of Wrecker. You're not getting the same complexity as Wrecker, so you don't get to do the defeater resource to deal 5 damage to something. But he can keep a board very clear, or he can push that 7 damage toward base. 7/6 on 6 is a mammoth stat line. This is just a big giant unit, and a big giant unit with high utility. This is a great thing to be able to put into play. Gorindon has kind of the opposite side of things. This is very, very similar to Bazine. There are a lot of ways that you can know what's there in your opponent's hand. And if you do, or if you guess it, you know, you're playing a draft pool, right? You have some idea what your opponent's drafted. If you're not necessarily tracking it, but if you have some idea and can kind of guess at what they might have in their hand, name a card. And if it's there, pop one of those cards out of there. Wrong Ride, again, Cunning, tempo play, exhaust 2 resources, pay 3 to exhaust 2. This is very disruptive. If I'm playing something and I still have the ability to do, if I'm playing plot and I have the ability to put this in here, and I can really tamper with my opponent's hand, pay 3 to exhaust 2 really harms curve. If your opponents are planning things and they've played out a lot of their low end and they're trying to play one of those high end costs, and you drop this, you can construct a limited deck in a way that does not go very high on curve. And if you do that and your opponents are trying to play very much on curve, Wrong Ride can really, really break them. So that's what we've got. The final thought here is that which uncommon cards are going to be best for you is going to depend on your overall pool. They are the ones that do a lot of the heavy lifting and a lot of kind of the game closing actions. I've been able to put some rares and legendaries on the board when playing sealed events, but more often than not, the card that comes down that seals the game one direction or another is an uncommon, and the cards that got me there are commons. Coming soon, look for the legendary and rare rankings, and then we'll follow that with the Win Your Prerelease Secrets of Power Edition. And check out the other videos in this little series. I will leave the leader rankings in the link in the video. There's also a subscribe button that will be there on the screen as well. So good luck, and thanks for watching. We will see you next time with the legendary and rare rankings.